Teddy, darling. Hi. Oh, the sun's very
Hello.
morning.
Hi,
Oh,
Teddy.
would you like to introduce the program? Yeah. Okay. All right. Um, are you ready to start? Is that a maybe or do you... Okay, good. Right. Ready? Hello and welcome to Pet Talk with me, Anna, and Teddy. Wonderful. And today we would like to introduce our guest. Do you remember I told you her name earlier? Do you remember? What's our guest's name today? Whoops, that was a bug. We just had breakfast. He was ready for his morning nap.
Oh,
Okay. Do you remember our guest's name? I told you earlier. Do you remember? Yes, that's right. Our wonderful guest today is Rachel Jackson. Well done. Thank you very much for helping out. Would you like to have a little nap again? Are you ready to go back to sleep? Okay, yeah, that's a yes. Hello, Rachel, and welcome. Now,
good morning, Anna and Teddy. That was beautifully done, Teddy. Thank you.
he's definitely ready for his morning nap now. Um, you have a wonderful title for your company. It is Well Balanced Animals, something that I hope we all aim for. What is well balanced animals? How do you help animals be well balanced?
So, oh, excuse me. I started actually nearly 25 years ago with our very first dog, who was a reactive lurcher. And I'm one of those people that I like to know what's happening and how best to help. And I decided that I needed to go on a training course for dog trainers, behavior type course. And while I was doing that, I came across Tellington Touch. They were running a weekend course, and I knew nothing about it, but knew that if if they were running it, the place that were Sheila Harper Canine Centre in Mooghley, then it would be kind, fair, ethical methods. And I went along and I just became hooked. So I went along and started the practitioner training later that year and qualified in 2002. It's a beautiful way of working with dogs who are anxious, who are struggling, who may be reactive, but may just sort of go inwards because we've got different ways that as humans we express our fear. You know, some people get very out, very shouty, some people go inwards, and many dogs do the same. So it isn't always the shouty bark, it might be those that go sort of a little bit away from something or just shut down a little bit, which I'd noticed actually with one of ours because I've had greyhounds and lurchers for 30 years and they do very much shut down and go inwards. So I've been doing that for um, nearly 25 years now, and I love the work. What I found was I was quite often having to suggest to people to go to the vets because there was something not quite right about the movement. There was some sort of physical issue. We use observations a lot in Tellington Touch to give us clues about how the dog is feeling and how they're holding their body and tension. So I decided to go back to university and train as a veterinary physiotherapist so that I could help them both with their emotional and behavioural side and the physical. So I was looking for a name that fitted all aspects. So as well as being the physical side of the physiotherapy, a lot of the dogs that I see, not all of them, have that little bit of anxiety, need to build that trust before you can start to treat them. So I get to have the best of both worlds, really. And I was looking for a name that encompassed all of that. and I came up with well-balanced animals.
That's wonderful, and I think it's very interesting because so many people who embark on one modality for healing, whether it be humans or animals, end up with more than one, because it just we know that not every animal is the same, and
Absolutely.
different approaches suit different animals, and also sometimes some issues require a different approach. So it's brilliant uh, to hear how you came about this. So for those, we've talked about T-Touch on this channel a number of times, but for those who are new to it, could you tell us about Tellington T-Touch?
It's it's really hard to describe in a couple of sentences because we can help animals with so many different issues, not just by helping the animal, and I use animal because T-Touch can help any species, although I predominantly work with dogs. But it can help with anxiety issues, it can help with reactivity, dogs who struggle with traveling or particularly sound sensitivity, so fireworks, thunderstorms. Dogs who struggle to walk while on the lead often have underlying anxieties. They're struggling in their environment. And it's also about teaching their person how they can best help their dog as well, because we only know what we know. And it's about giving them that information and observation skills to see how their animal is feeling in that moment and maybe what they could do, change, improve on, just to make things easier for them. So there are a number of parts to T-Touch. What most people are aware of are the little gentle movements that we do on the dog's body that we call the T-Touches. There, we call it a message, not massage. It's really, really light, but we're giving the nervous system information. And I'm so pleased that you said about how every dog's an individual because they are all different. Even if they've got the same uh, anxieties, they may be holding their body differently. It may show to their person differently to another dog. And this is where we can really help them find a way of coping and changing that tension in the body that can help them be more relaxed, be less stressed. Those dogs that live at this higher level can actually come down and live at a calmer, more relaxed level, which means that they're less likely to go up to the top as well. So we also use body wraps, we use groundwork, so some leading work as part of the groundwork, going over and through obstacles to increase flexibility in the body, because with flexibility in the body comes flexibility in the mind and vice versa. So it's very much about helping each individual animal be the best that they possibly can.
You used the term groundwork. So for those who are unfamiliar, can you explain that, please?
Yeah, sure. So we also call it the playground of higher learning. We get into patterns and habits as people, we do. I know I tend to sit with my legs crossed, which isn't very good for me. And I am able then to uncross them because I'm aware that that isn't good for me. But it's a very strong habit. So the chances are I will go back to it, even though I'm aware of it. Our animals aren't so aware of how they move. They do what they can. So the groundwork is working within a comfortable level. For example, surfaces on the ground are really helpful for building proprioceptive awareness. A lot of dogs don't have very good body awareness. So giving them that sensory information through their pads can be really helpful. But again, by giving them the choices. So what we do very much in T-Touch is if something's difficult for them, we chunk it down. So we break it down to an easier level. The groundwork can include a little bit of walking through poles, so looking at gentle movements, not really sharp. People tend to think if you're using poles and they're upright, it's a really tight weave, a little bit like agility. We're looking at how softly they can move. If we're creatures of habit and always walk on our dogs on one side of us, which we're often taught to, that can create a dog that is a little bit one-sided as well, particularly if they're a dog who tends to look up at you. It shifts the weight balance, it will alter the muscle structure. You know, they may lack symmetry in the muscles. They may find it easier to turn one way or another. So it's very much about teaching them how they can move, not just creating that habit. It's very much using novel movements in a way to give their body information and their nervous system information. So very much low level. It can be done by most animals, even sort of your seniors, to give them that sense of how they can move and find that physical balance.
That is such an important thing that you've just said. And I think there's so much there. And I'm just trying to pick which bit, but I think we're going to stick with the groundwork for a moment
Okay.
because we know if we haven't been exercising or well, let's take dancers, for instance. They're very aware of their posture. People who do yoga are very aware of their posture. If you're doing Pilates, Alexander technique, all of these things make us aware of our posture. But until we start actually doing them, we're not aware of our posture. And we know that also things like rolfing, that massage technique, that
Yeah.
is very challenging actually, but fabulous. This is for humans. We know that a good rolfing practitioner will take a look at us and know which side of our body we're favoring. And, you know, and if you look at our shoes, one heel is going to be more worn than another. And it's
Yes.
the same for our animals, is what you're saying. And it makes so much sense. I was very concerned about Teddy always walking on my right and looking up at me. And so I taught him a cue for left. So we made it a game so that he knows when to walk left, when to walk right, to the right of me. And
Brilliant.
I think that was me thinking, is he going to get a crick in his neck? But I also noticed early on, when he was about 1.5, and we started to do agility, and I was doing parkour games with him as well, how his confidence, his body confidence, actually seemed to blossom. So what you're talking about is just so important. But the sensory bit on the pads, that's something that a lot of people won't think about. Is that why do you think that is so important?
You've actually really hit the nail on the head there when you talked about confidence. A lot of our dogs who struggle in everyday life, whatever aspect that is, these may be the dogs that will avoid new things. If you think of humans, we sometimes describe them as glass half empty and glass half full people. These dogs are a little bit on the glass half empty. They're suspicious of new things. They think, oh, not sure, and you see that degree of hesitation, or they may avoid something. Because we give them those choices as to the surfaces are there, they get to choose if they walk on it. That really helps build their confidence because they're being allowed that degree of choice. And it may be that at one point they'll put one paw on it, And then they start to build that confidence. Because if they're confident in their body, they're confident in their mind as well. It has a real shift. When we think of textures, our dogs can feel things through the skin. The skin is the biggest organ in the body, and it's the most overlooked in our animals, apart from when we're thinking maybe about grooming, for example, or if they've got allergies and skin issues. But there's a lot that they can learn through walking on different surfaces, whether they're stable. We don't tend to use unstable surfaces. We're looking at just maybe a little bit of a shift if they're physically capable of it. But that again is where you have to be aware of the dog's whole picture. It's a very, and holistic is a word that's used a lot, but it is very much looking at the whole animal. So giving them that opportunity to walk on different surfaces really builds that confidence because they have that ability to feel things slightly differently through the feet. And it was interesting what you were saying about the shoes in people, because that's very true. But you can also do the same with your dogs. So look at the wear, and if the pads, some are smoother or rougher than others, or particularly the nail wear. So if you've got a dog who's maybe might not be very noticeable, but just slightly dragging, typically a hind foot, you may get more wear on mainly the middle two nails on the back foot, or if they're putting their foot so that there's more weight on the outside, on the lateral side, the outer nail may be worn a little bit more. So it looks like it's been filed a little bit. It may be jagged or it may have been worn smooth. But having that awareness of how they are wearing their nails tells us a lot about how they're moving normally and actually how we can help them rebalance if they're physically able to, and giving them the opportunity to.
This is so vital, isn't it? Because a lot of our dogs don't move very much because they're indoors a lot. And it's not that we're all meant to have dogs who are doing flyball and agility, etc. It's more about the fact that just like us, they need to move. And if
Absolutely.
we're aware we of these things, then we can encourage them and not go from no activity to intense activity, but just see how they're walking and observing them, when they're out, you know, on walks, and do they get a chance to run off lead and express themselves. I think that that's a really important thing.
You've actually pulled out quite a lot there as well that we can sort of look at more, because some dogs are more sedentary, but we can do groundwork inside the house. We don't necessarily need a big garden. There are options that we can do. We can set scent work things up in the house so that they're maybe not overstretching, but maybe reaching a little bit. Maybe they're having to go behind things, just a little bit of body turning, so that they are getting more movement during the day. So, I do get clients go, well, I've only got a small back garden. Sometimes it's looking a little bit outside the box and finding other ways that we can do it. I've been doing a little bit of parkour with our younger dog. I have done it with another one of ours previously, and he loved it. It helps build confidence. It helps them in being bodily aware again. So we've been doing a little bit of that. Again, you can do that in the house. We don't necessarily always need to think, oh, I haven't got the garden. Yes, take them out on walks, but maybe take them to a few different places as well. So they're getting different sights, different senses, different smells, different surfaces under the feet. And that might be hard if your dog's reactive, but you may find that there's one or two places that you can go, or at certain times that they can go for a really good sniff. We've got somewhere, we had a dog who was the most divine boy. He was dog reactive, he had separation anxiety, He struggled with quite a lot of things actually, but I found the perfect place to walk him. Yes, he went to secure fields and he went to other places, but we had this one place where we had a good view, so we could see if someone was coming towards us, where dogs are on lead. So I knew that we could just move out of the way, cross over, whatever we needed to do. So sometimes you might have to do a little bit of a search, but it is really important that they move in some way. You know, it's not necessarily like you were saying, they don't have to be doing sports. There's so many things that we can do with our dogs these days that actually we're spoiled for choice, that actually just gets them moving. Maybe if you've got a dog that's been bred for a specific activity, which a lot of our dogs are, maybe actually go into those kind of activities that help them use their natural skills so that they're less likely to get frustrated, because we've bred them to do certain things and then we maybe don't want them to do it. So it's finding a safe outlet for that, or maybe changing it to something else that they might like to do as well. So there's so many different options.
One of the things that we often feel a little bit torn about is harnesses, because it turns out the wrong harness can actually adversely affect their posture. So, if we're looking at a harness, what would you recommend?
There have not been that many studies looking at harnesses, but if you look at how a dog moves in a harness and how they look when they're free walking, you will get an idea of not just the fit, but also if you add in the fact that they may be wearing a harness because they pull on the lead, then it's also where is that harness putting the pressure from the lead. And this is where with T-Touch we have many different ways we can help our dogs walk on a loose lead. Harnesses are part of that, but there's so much more that we can do that is fabulous, that gets me so excited. But yes, what we want in our harness, firstly, is it's whatever design, and there's so many to choose from. I feel so sorry for dog guardians these days because they can go into a shop and it's a case of there's a wall full, and which one do I choose? You want one that is a good fit, and some breeds struggle with that. I actually, because I have greyhounds, lurchers, and I've now got a borzoi, they're very deep chested but narrow. A lot of harnesses that would fit them in one area don't fit through the chest because it's too long. So find someone who can make you a harness if you've got a dog who is one of those slightly more out of the average range of sizes, because it will be so much more comfortable and safer. The other thing is avoid those that go straight across the front and go across the shoulder blades. Our shoulders are attached by bones. A dog's shoulder is only attached by muscles. So there are lots of muscles under the structure that keep the shoulder in place and on top, but we don't want to inhibit that movement because it's going to be uncomfortable, is number one. But also structurally, is it going to affect their muscling? Is it going to affect how comfortable they are being able to freely move? So harnesses that sometimes nowadays they're called a Y-shaped harness. So they come down to a V shape on the chest and then a single one through the middle. But what you've also got to watch for is if you've got a smaller dog, some of them are fabric, but the fabric's really wide. So actually it might be rubbing underneath the front legs. So there's all sorts of different things that can make harness fit tricky. We also use harnesses that have a front and back connector. I've seen some people just use the front, But if you think what biomechanically that's likely to do, we're on one side, that's going to rotate the front if they're pulling, or even if we're just behind them. So avoid a single point of contact on the front because that's going to affect them physically as well. So while we use the front in T-touch, we use it in conjunction with the back as well, never on its own. So yeah, it's a really big area. And if you're not sure, find somebody who's qualified who can help you. Just find the right type. I do harness fittings when I'm here. I recommend certain harnesses for certain types of dogs. We have a T-touch harness, but like I say, I get my dogs made for them. If you've got dogs with thinner skins and thinner coats, you don't want anything that's going to rub them. So I get the fleecy lined ones. There's so many options. But it is really important that it is a good fit and that it's a beneficial piece of equipment that we're using with them as well.
It is, it is one of those things that people often, treat as a bit of a fashion. And on the other hand, I feel that it's better than a collar. You see poor dogs, being choked, even though they're not choke collars because they're pulling. Uh,
Yes.
and so this is a very important thing. But it's when I was choosing one for Teddy, I did quite a lot of research, and I found that there's a particular type, and I'm sure there are others, where you can do adjustments in like four different places,
Yeah.
so that it's much more comfortable, and you do want something soft because how would you like something hard rubbing up against your body, etc. So these are important things. Now you were coming back to let's come back to T-touch itself,
Okay.
because you were saying there's quite a lot that we can do to help dogs walk more comfortably or more calmly on a lead. And I think that this is particularly younger dogs. And I know I couldn't get any sense out of Teddy on a lead for at least the first 8 months. And even then, that was only a mild improvement. It meant that he remembered I existed at the other end of the lead. So tell us about things that at home we might be able to do to calm them. I know that when Teddy is aroused, even now, he is a formidable force. Just put it and you'll know what I mean.
Yes.
So what can we do?
So there's actually lots that we can do. And we do start at home because the nervous system can listen and learn much better when it's in a calmer state than if, for example, we're out and about. If we think about puppies, particularly younger dogs, they're growing at a really great rate as well. So you get this shift as they're growing. Some dogs you can almost see the front end grows first, then the back end, and you get this real shift in balance, which really is difficult then for them to walk in balance even if they're off lead, let alone when they add us at the other end of the lead. And we're not always the most helpful. We try very hard, but dogs move very quickly. They have a faster gait than us. I'm not particularly tall, so my legs aren't that long, and I've got some of the taller breeds, and it's just a case of okay, we'll work through this. Within T-touch, what we say is do the work. So we don't necessarily do one specific thing to help one specific issue. We've got lots of different tools in our toolbox, which means that if something doesn't seem to suit that dog or their guardian, then there's something else that we can do instead. So we would start with the body work, doing the little T-touches, the circle and a quarter, because you may also have a dog who struggles with having something put on their body. So they may not be overly comfortable with having a harness put on to begin with. And what's sad for me is often you'll hear people say, it's the guardian's fault. We know that within a litter of puppies, you can get one that is more vocal, that struggles more with handling, that avoids people a little bit more than the others. When you've got that from the very beginning, that is going to have a knock-on effect as they grow as well. So it's finding ways to help those dogs from a very young age. So starting with some of the small circle and a quarter movements, we can help their nervous system learn a little bit better about where they are in space, about how they're moving. Can we just even using the back of the hand, which feels very different to the palm where we tend to stroke, can we move our hand all the way along the body? Or do they move away when we get to a certain point? Can we go down the legs? Now, the back of the hand can be really helpful there because if we do with the front of the hand down the legs, there's always the possibility that we might inadvertently grab. So they may be more sensitive to that. Having some of the groundwork set out, these are all things that we can do to start with before we even think about popping a harness, lead, etc. on. One thing I do see that's part of that is thinking about the length of the lead. So if you've got a particularly tall person with a small dog, for example, a dachshund, and I do see quite a few dachshunds, think about that length of the lead. If it's not very long, how much leeway has the dog actually got to go and sniff a little bit, to get a little bit ahead or a little bit behind? So actually, the more space we can safely give them on the lead, it's not about them just doing anything and just going off. It's about giving them the opportunity to move a little bit more freely. And what tends to happen if a dog pulls us, we end up behind them and we end up pulling as well. So you get this pull-pull response that actually neither of us are in balance. It's really not comfortable for anybody. And, I've heard people say, they like pulling. Well, actually, they're not aware that there's a difference. When we teach them that they can walk slowly in balance, that they can be more relaxed, because you may have found with Teddy, because I know I found this with my dogs and clients' dogs, that when you go somewhere new, that excitement level just pings them up and that's it. Oh, I need to sniff here. And, oh, is there someone at the end of the lead? No, I'm busy, because the environment is just so exciting, overwhelming, whatever it is for that dog. So starting around the home, in the garden, teaches them how to move more in balance. So we've used double-ended leads, so with a clip at both ends, so we can attach it to the front and the back of the harness. You can put a sliding handle on that, which then means that there's none of that tension. So the dog doesn't get to the end of the lead and then feel that pull from us, because it's sliding, it moves along the lead. Gives us a chance to be in a better position as well, next to the dog rather than behind them. We've got a piece of equipment that's called a connector, which is similar effect to the handle, except it's shorter, attaches to the back and the front of the harness, but has a clip that slides that you can attach the lead to. So actually with that, you can give them that bit more space. And often with that bit more space, they find their own balance and they're more able to walk in their own balance. But starting at home is absolutely key, because we need to find their own physical balance first, do fun things with them so that they are aware of us being there. But then, yes, we have certain pieces of equipment that help them walk in balance, that then help us keep them in balance as well. Not by using pressure or force, but it's more mechanically okay for them. And, obviously you can't have a massive long lead by the side of the road, but you can have it a little bit shorter. You can maybe use a phrase I have steady that I use, which just means just stay around here. It's not a heel work position. It's a just stay in this general area and we'll be okay. So it's about them learning as they grow as well, because their balance is going to change so much while they are growing. The other thing is, we tend to think about those dogs that are fast on the lead, but how about those that are really slow, that actually come to a halt? I was saying earlier about the different extremes in what we see, in sort of what we see as the symptoms. They can be feeling the same underneath as their absolute opposite. So the dog that stops may also be overwhelmed, may also be just, whoa. And I work quite a lot with greyhounds because greyhounds are kind of my people as a species, but also because as ex-racers, they've had a different life experience. And because I have an understanding of that, I have people who come to me, and we tend to label, as a species, we're labelers, they're, think of the words that you might hear people use, but actually, if you break it down, so for example, you'll often hear those that stop dead on the lead labeled as stubborn, awkward. These are words that you kind of go, okay, what is it you're seeing? Break it down to actually what their observation is. Then you can explain it in a way that the guardian can understand, that actually they may be feeling a little bit overwhelmed, that by just pausing and taking a breath ourselves, because we often get that little bit as well, just take a breath. It softens us through the body, it gives them a moment. We do something that's very, very gentle, that's stroking the lead. So one hand underneath another, not letting go of the lead, but just this really gentle movement that will really help just send a vibration down the lead. It's a little bit like a hello. So it's not to pull them off balance, because when we pull or they pull, we create an imbalance. What we want is for them to be in balance. But that can go, can we just do this? Can we move? And if not, that's okay. We maybe need to find something else that we need to do to help them. But being aware of, actually, it may just be that walk was a little bit much. Maybe not even on that day. Maybe the day before they had a really tricky day and they're just in a little bit of overwhelm. So giving them a different type of walk, or maybe them not going out and doing something else instead, could be a better option for them.
I love that you brought up stroking the lead. I'd actually forgotten about stroking the lead. But I do remember very vividly a workshop that I attended with the wonderful Sarah Fisher. And she was the first person I'd ever heard talking about stroking the lead. And watching her do this, and I felt that was mesmerizing, the effect that it had. But I've remembered it in the last week, because we have been seeing a huge number of foxes when we've gone out in the evenings.
Ah,
And Teddy's arousal level is up the scale when he sees foxes. And rather than allowing him to go completely mad, as is usual, what I started to do is, when he spots it in the distance, I've started stroking the lead. And within seconds, he's not looking at the fox. He turns back to me. And then I throw some treats on the ground for him to go and find, and it calms him enough. And then we take a few steps, and you can see he's still on hyper alert, but hopefully in that time, the fox has decided that it would be a good idea to move. Although lately, I swear they're taunting him. Um, they're just staring at him. They're not going to move. please just move.
I think they may be in freeze as well, though. What do we
Yeah,
do?
honestly, though, I think they are incredibly relaxed. I don't think they are at freeze. They are, you know how cats tease dogs sometimes? I promise you, these foxes are now teasing dogs because the dogs are on a lead. They know it's not going to be anything that's going to harm them. So, anyway, but the stroking of the lead, that really, really has begun to make a difference because I'm wanting to help him to be calm in this environment. We haven't been able to go out into the woods in daytime because of the heat. We've been taking
Yeah.
neighborhood walks in the evening, and that's, I've been taking him to my allotments, and that's where the foxes are hanging out, or actually in the streets approaching.
Yeah.
They're lying down, cool as cucumbers, on the grass verges in the streets. In fact, I've got a picture of one sitting on a person's front porch.
Oh, wow. I wonder if they feed them.
I wonder that. They are very cool and collected. So Teddy is needing a little bit of help, and the stroking of the
Yeah.
lead is where I've started. Uh,
Brilliant.
it's lovely that you brought that up.
The thing is, sorry for interrupting, but in most cases, we've got a lead with us. They're on the lead. So it's not that we're having to think of anything new. Like you said, it's just actually remembering it's a possibility to do it. And it just stops that when they start to just get that little bit tense, when you just start to see that interest, maybe the neck goes up, the ear posture changes, there's just that little look in their eye, and you kind of, hopefully we've spotted it first, but not always. Sometimes they spot them before we do. Actually, again, that's that time to just remember, take a breath, exhale, stroke, and then see if they can just come around you and just break that intense move look. And that also, like you say, then gives them time, the fox time to just saunter off as they do. I mean, it's that time of year where they've got young as well. So I think they're out earlier and later. I've had people turn up at my house 9:30 in the morning and go, "Oh, we've just seen the fox in your garden." Okay, that's quite late for them, but they're still out gathering food. So, as the seasons change and life cycles alter, then it also does for our wildlife. If you think of squirrels in November, that time of year when they're gathering things, they're often on the ground more and they're less aware of dogs and people and everything going on around them. That may be a time when dogs recall kind of comes down a level or two. We've had a really good year, and then all of a sudden there's all these squirrels on the ground. It can be enough for them to just go, "Ooh, wow, squirrels, all of them, look, what, ooh." So actually, taking a step back, maybe altering what we do or where we go, just so that we're not creating that high level of excitement, because excitement um, also creates stress type hormones in the body. So it's fine for them to get excited, but we don't want this really high, massive effect because, yeah, it's just not conducive to them for thinking. And we want them in a thinking state, not just reacting, which is what they're doing when they see the squirrels. That kick in of the, oh, we actually want them going, "Oh, there's a squirrel, but I can go this way," which is kind of your yes moment.
Absolutely. One last question for you, and I suspect this is a big one, but perhaps we could just touch on it lightly.
Yeah.
When we're talking, because you also work with cats, obviously cats in some ways are very different to dogs. And we always think of them as being very lithe and very flexible. And so, what are we looking at when we're looking at the balance of a cat? It almost seems impossible to imagine, because they are so graceful, that they're ever asymmetrical or out of balance.
Cats are really interesting. Most of the clients that I've had are cats that have either senior, and I'll come back to that in a minute, or who've had surgery. Now, the thing with any species, they have to be in a lot of pain by the time they're limping. So if we're seeing limping, then that is a yes, there's something quite considerable going on there, whether it's acute or chronic. But what we see in all species is a change in behavior. And it's the same for, and I'm just going to make this a little bit more multi-species. The dog who won't now jump into the car, who's always done it, or jump up on the settee, or is sort of going slower on walks. There's maybe something that needs checking there. The same with our cats. So if you think about what cats typically do, they like, if you've got an indoor cat, they like to be able to climb high. You know, having shelves for them to explore and move from is really perfect for them. They're known for landing on their feet, but actually, if they're outdoor cats, has something happened that we're not aware of? Because we are much less aware of what they're doing when they're out than our dogs. So, looking for that change in behaviour. Are they still grooming the way that they were? Something as simple as them changing their litter box use, in that can they actually lift their feet up to get in? Or are they starting to have accidents outside the litter box? So, anytime you see a change in behaviour, be aware of it and think about what may be the underlying reason. Cats are also likely to get arthritis as they get older, and it's even less diagnosed in cats than it is dogs. So we've got these things going on for them that maybe we will see behaviour changes rather than the limping. You may see an asymmetry, so maybe they lose muscling on one side because, again, they're very stoic. They hide things that are going on. So you may not see a limp, but if you look at them, and a good way to do this is look at them from behind and at a low level so that you're kind of looking at them straight on, to look at the muscles on the hind legs, but also look at them from the front, are the shoulder muscles even. Look at them from the top, because then you'll get an outline of any asymmetry on both sides. And also look at them from the side. If you've got an animal that's compensating, say, for example, they've got a problem with one of the hind legs, they may put more weight on the front legs. So actually, you get more muscle around the shoulders, around the forelegs, and the back legs look like they belong to another animal because they've lost that muscle. So it may not just be asymmetry that you're seeing, it may be a general loss of muscle. So that's usually used as described as muscle atrophy. But it can be one-sided, it can be both, depending on how they're compensating. But if you've got a cat who used to play a lot and isn't playing anymore, are they sleeping more? Did they used to sleep on a high bed, but now they're not getting up there? So all of these things just give us that information of what may be changing for them and seeing what may need checking by the vet to see what's going on, and then from there, what we can do to help them.
Wow, you are just a wonderful source of information, and your experience and your knowledge are so valuable to us. Thank you so much for your time today, Rachel.
Thank you for having me with you, Anna. I've really enjoyed it. And Teddy, of course, is he asleep now?
Yes, he's. I just heard you mention his name. His little head poked up a bit. So yes, thank you very, very much. Now, if people want to find you, how do they do that?
So my website is www.wellbalancedanimals-vetphysio.co.uk. I'm on Facebook as Well Balanced Animals. I am on Instagram as Well Balanced Animals, although I'm not on Instagram quite as much. Or people can ring me. My number's 07809 437 967.
I will be putting a link to your website in the description box as well as your social media. Rachel, thank you again for your time today.
Thank you, Anna.
And thank you all for watching. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.